Hello, everyone, and welcome to the day five and also a final day of our webinar week celebration 20 years of WordPress. We have had some incredible sessions with multiple WordPress influencers, and today we are thrilled to have Vaselina, a renowned trainer and public speaker, joining us. Before we begin, I have two questions to Vaselina that we ask to every speaker like, how do you feel about WordPress is turning 20 years?
Frankly, Dinesh, I think it's a great news because in this internet age there are very few platforms that can actually celebrate the 20th anniversary. It's going so fast and so great. But for me, like the good news is that WordPress has this tenacity to it, and it's been around for a really long time. And I can actually hardly even like comprehend how long a period that is for a tech company. So I'm very happy to be here and celebrate that with you.
Awesome. And the second question that I have in my mind, and we are asking this question to every guest, that what is your earliest memory with WordPress? Can you please share that?
So I started getting to know WordPress as a blogger. At the time, I was actually on Blogger, and then I heard from a friend about WordPress as a blogging platform. I was like very curious, so I looked around, poked a little bit, and a friend said, "Hey, like let me take you around like the backend and how it works and so on." And it was so much easier to understand. It somehow clicked with me, so I was like, okay, I need to move to this as soon as possible and get my blog set up here rather than where it was before. And this is sort of the initial sort of like little first step that became a big thing for me, because even up to this day I have a ton of clients who are creating their websites on WordPress, and I would generally actually always recommend WordPress as a solution. It almost always happens to be a good fit for the projects at least I work on. So yeah.
That's wonderful, Vaselina. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and memories with us. Now, could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, of course. So my name is actually, the short version is Vasi. This is what I usually use, and this is what you also see on the screen here. I've been working in digital marketing for more than 15 years now, and I've been focused on creating digital platforms, content marketing platforms for my clients. So what I usually like to say is that I help brands build lasting relationships with their audiences, and this is where content comes into play, and this is also where WordPress as a content hub can come into play as well.
Great. Thank you, Vaselina, for the introduction. We are honored to have you here today. Without further ado, I will hand over the floor to you to begin your presentation.
Awesome, thanks so much. Cool. Okay, guys, let's get this show on the road, as they say. So, what we'll be talking about today is the brand of you. I'll be giving you the tips and tools that you can use to create a personal brand, be it because you're a freelancer or a standalone, an independent digital professional like I am. Or if you're part of a small team, a small agency, personal branding can go a long way there as well, because this is where personal connections actually play a huge role. And the sum of everyone's expertise on a small team actually is what clients actually get from us. So I already did my introduction. I just want to sort of leave you, even at this early stage, with the idea that I'd love to help you if I can in some shape or form with your personal or your company branding. So if after this session you have questions that are left unanswered, or if you have some ideas on how to elevate your personal brand and I may be of help for you, I'll be more than happy to chat. And the second thing that I want to mention early on is that I'm trying to cram up here something that could very well be a 3-hour workshop. And we're doing a quick session here to give you the highlights when it comes to personal branding for digital professionals. So I'll be going fast, but don't worry, because in the end, you'll see a link where you can get all the slides and all the details around this presentation. So stay tuned. Don't be all frizzled up about making screenshots of what you see here. You'll get everything in its own time. So let's start with discussing brand as a whole. So we would usually hear that a brand is a very valuable thing. And you may have seen some numbers out there about the value some big brands have. So what you see on the screen here, this is a survey that's done on an annual basis called Interbrand's Best Global Brands. And what Interbrand does is it tries to evaluate how important, how worthy a brand is. And as you can see here, in first place, we have Apple, and that's $482 billion. That's billion with a B. So apparently, a brand can be a big driver of value, but what exactly is it? We would often conflate a brand with a logo. So if you think of Starbucks, you're thinking about the two-tailed mermaid. But a brand is actually a lot more than this. So, for example, in Starbucks case, what they say their brand ethos is they say they are here to inspire and nurture the human spirit. So this is their vision. And this is what they are trying to do. But the brand is frankly so much more than this, really. It's really the way you feel when you enter a Starbucks, or the way that they would have their own sort of naming convention for all the different types of drinks that they create, or even the amazingly creative ways in which any barista at Starbucks can misspell your name in 100 different ways. All of this, your overall experience with the brand, is what a brand actually is. And Jeff Bezos actually put it in the most succinct and the simplest terms possible. And he says a brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. So take a second here. Let's take a bit and think about what would your own clients say about you if you're not in the room. Will they mention the things that are important to you as a professional? I'm not even speaking here about whether or not they'll have a positive experience to share or not. I'm talking about whether or not you'll be, let's say, the first person who comes to mind when they're talking about, hey, I need help with someone setting up my website, or hey, I need help with improving the SEO of my WordPress site. Or, hey, I need someone who can help me build content marketing to, promote my brand. Will you be the first person that they mention if you're not even there? Well, this is what we want to achieve with personal branding, because we really have just two options there. Because the world nowadays is so full of different experts who are promoting their services, especially in the digital world, that we can only do one of two things. The first one is differentiating through value. So showcasing that you're a professional who knows their stuff, showing that you're a person who cares about the success of their clients. And this is where personal branding comes in. And the other option, it's not really fun, because if you're not a well-established brand, even on a personal level, then you really need to compete only by price. And that's just a slide down a very slippery slope, because you need to cut your costs, you need to cut your prices, you need to, create simpler things that you probably wouldn't even be proud of presenting to an audience. So I hope that by now you really see the value in creating a personal brand. So what is a brand all about? What do we want to achieve? What are our goals when we're building a personal brand? Well, I like to think in terms of triplets, of threes. And to build a brand, you really want to achieve three things. The first one is to get people to know you, then you want them to like you, and then you want them to trust you. And once they go through all of these three steps, this is when hiring you for your expertise and for your knowledge actually will be the only valid option that they can have for their business. They're not going to be phased by the price you give them or by the fact that you need to take longer than someone else to run the project that they're for. If they know, like, and trust you, they'll choose you before any of your other fellow competing digital professionals any day of the week. So, when we're talking about knowing, how can we do that? And what do I actually mean by knowing? Well, I really love this uh, thinking about a potential client in these terms that you see here on the screen. This is a print ad from the publishing house McGraw Hill. And what this very skeptical person says here for us is, I don't know who you are. I don't know your company. I don't know your company's product. I don't know what your company stands for. I don't know your company's customers, your record and reputation. So what it is that you actually wanted to sell me. And so often I would see people who come to me and say, hey, I want to get sales, and this is the most important thing, and this is what I'm hiring you to do for me. But in order to get there, we first need to tell this very skeptical potential customer who we actually are. So, how do we do that? Well, this is where WordPress as a platform and as a community, most important of all, comes in. Because you can get people to know you by first off simply meeting them. So being present in the room, no matter if it's a physical meetup or if it's a virtual Slack community or a LinkedIn professional group where you can give some advice. So you need to be where everyone is at. And I think that the best thing that we have with WordPress is this very active community. And there are places online and there are places offline where we all gather to meet up and to make connections. So networking is the first step to getting others to know you. Then the second thing is sharing what you know. And that's very much connected to the third element here, helping others out. So being there for people, giving them a piece of your expertise, some small piece of advice that they can follow and get results quickly, or helping them out if they've come across a bug that they can't solve on themselves. This is all a way to share what you know and help others out, all within this global community that we have here. And this is what's going to help you get known in the community. You don't get known just by being, like a star or anything like that. No, like you get known because you're that helpful person who actually answers questions and, provides a bit of value every time. And one sort of issue that most people have with this approach here is that they say, hey, like if I share everything that I know, then people are just gonna do it for themselves and not hire me. So how do we go from one to the other? Well, here's a quick example. This is a blog post I wrote a few years back on a customer development technique called jobs to be done. It's a very long post. You don't see it here on the screen, but it's something like 20 minutes of reading time. And it actually goes through my whole process of doing customer interviews to uncover important information that helps us then do better marketing. So what I did here is I went through all the steps. I gave people the templates that I use and all of the materials around that topic. I shared everything that I know. And still, even by sharing very specific instructions on how you can get through that process, this is one of the blog posts that drives the most, number of potential clients to me. And they say something like this: hey, I see that you're very knowledgeable about the jobs to be done methodology. I am very thankful that you've shared so much about it. Would you be willing to help us work on a project like that? And really, it's all about showing the people how complex your expertise is and what you're trying to do for them and what results it can bring. More often than not, people are gonna see what you're doing from as a day-to-day job, and they're gonna say, "Hey, that's too complicated for me to do on my own. So I want to hire her to do it for me because she obviously knows a lot and is not, afraid of sharing all of that knowledge and all of that expertise." And this is where sharing what you know can actually get you clients. So don't be afraid of sharing as much as possible. Your number of potential new clients coming through efforts like that is gonna be much higher. So just if you're thinking that this is a hurdle, then we've jumped through it successfully together. So the second goal that I mentioned was generating liking. So how can we get people to not just know that we exist, but actually be interested in what we have to say and find what we say being actually valuable? Well, there's another quote that I really love from a very bright person called Albert Einstein, who said that it's more important to be a person of value than being a person of success. So getting others to like you can only happen by giving them additional value. And I already spoke a bit about that, but I want to dive deeper into what I mean by providing value and why that's important in marketing and personal branding terms. So here's what that looks like. We can think of building value as sort of a flywheel. So what we start off with is we create something valuable. We give people advice, we share how-tos, we provide them with interesting information that's going to help them achieve better results. And this is where we're creating value for others that goes beyond the services that we can provide. But this can happen by sharing content online, participating in the WordPress community, and doing anything else that makes sense to you. So if this content is truly valuable, then people are going to engage with it and they're going to be interested in what you have to say. So this means that they're going to be interested, they're going to pay attention, they're going to be there reading and consuming the content you create. They're going to interact with it, sharing it with others, commenting, saving these articles for future reading, and so on and so forth. And all of these engagement points, actually, from a marketer's perspective, from the perspective of even if you look at something like social media algorithms or SEO signals, this engagement makes your content more visible online. So if people interact with your posts on LinkedIn, they're going to be seen by a much larger audience. If your articles are read and people actually come to your website and spend time there, these are all user behavior signals that give Google an idea that you're a good source of information, and this can help increase your SEO rankings. So this is where this becomes a loop for your brand to grow. This is where all of this content that now is more visible will get to new people, bringing more value to them, getting them to engage, and so on and so forth. So it's like a circle that's a very positive experience for everyone involved and for your personal brand as well. And when I'm talking about value, I want you to think of 3 different types of value that we can provide. The simplest 2 types of value that we usually think of when it comes to building the brand of a professional are informational and functional value. So informational value is explaining to people what something is. For example, what is a Gutenberg block, let's say. And then a functional value can be showing people how to create something. So explaining to them how they can make better pages by including a bunch of different blocks together in a single landing page. So this is what we usually think of when it comes to business related content and what we can do as digital professionals. But there's actually a third type that I argue is just as important, and this is the emotional value. So when it comes to the emotional value, I'm talking about sharing with people what can make them happy, what can make them excited or motivated to do something else, or sharing a personal story about an experience you've had and an emotion you've had that's related to your work. Emotions are just as important in business as actual like logical arguments and so on, so don't discount that. Make sure that you're also including that in your overall strategy of building your brand. So get out there and get going. Okay, so I can stop for a sec here because I think we have an announcement.
So announcement for those who are watching us, you have a chance to earn $100 hosting credit if you answer this simple trivia question that is on your screen right now. Because we are celebrating WordPress anniversary, so the question is related to WordPress, like how important is regular updating and patching of WordPress core plugins and themes for maintaining website security? One liner answer we need, and we will give $100 hosting credit for the first five right answers from the audience. So there is a chance for you to win $100 hosting credit by answering this simple question. Vaselina, you can continue.
Man, I wish I was able to participate, but guys. So, back to brand building goals. So, the third thing that I wanted to mention here was building trust. And this is frankly the most important bit in here, because building trust is the gateway to creating a long-term relationship that's built around business goals. So Zig Ziglar, the king of sales, says that if people like you, they will listen to you, but if they trust you, they'll do business with you. And this is why this is the third step in this brand building process. And I would argue this is probably the most important one. So again, how do we manage to build this brand value? Well, there's an answer to that that's rooted in statistics and research, and it comes from a survey called the Edelman Trust Barometer. So, what the Edelman Trust Barometer does is it's an annual survey that looks at who people trust really. So, when we're talking about someone speaking on behalf of a brand, people say that they trust, and you see these circled in here, technical experts for the most part, which is all of you digital professionals. And then a person like myself comes in third place. And I really like the connection between these two things, because this is really, really who we trust when we are starting to work with someone. We want both of those things. We want the professional side for sure. We want to make sure that this person knows their stuff. But we also want to know that they're fun to work with, that they're a cool person who shares the same ideas and values as us, who's interesting to talk to, and so on. And at the intersection between the professional and the personal is where trust happens. And I want to bring you back again to WordPress as a community. This is really like what makes us all tick. We're there in the WordPress community, both as knowledgeable professionals, but also as people building connections. And I really love the fact that this is a community that's very accepting, that's very inclusive, and that's really, making it easy to put your best foot forward. No one that I've ever met at a WordPress event or online somewhere has been, standing like that with their arms crossed across their face and being like, oh, I don't really like you, even though I don't know you. No, they're very open. And this is where this personal / professional connection can really thrive. So, How do we get through these three tasks, getting people to know us, like us, and trust us, and building that on scale? Well, this is what we in marketing jargon called audience development. So we want to create audiences that first go through all these three steps and then in the end potentially decide to work with us. One thing that I want to start with here that's very important is that all engagement online is not created equal. And when I'm talking about audiences online, it can be very easy to think about, well, the easy channels, like, getting 1,000 people to follow you on Twitter or getting 500 connections or more on LinkedIn. But this may be easy to do, or relatively easier than other channels, but it may not be as valuable. So here's a quick example of what engagement hierarchy can look like. If you have your own community or if you have your own email newsletter, you can get people to engage with that. So this is the highest level of engagement. Even if you get 50 people to subscribe to your email this month, that's, I'd argue, better news than getting 500 to follow you on Twitter. Then getting people to consume long form content, or getting them to subscribe to your podcast or to watch YouTube or Twitch videos, depending on like what you're focusing on there. Or this is about getting people to interact with the big valuable pieces of content that we're creating. And this is where we need to invest most time. And then only after that come all the social media platforms where you can build followers much easier than you can build email subscribers or members of a closed community online. But this is also the first step of interacting with most of your audience. So what you'll be trying to do is get people through each of these steps higher up that engagement hierarchy. And as soon as you get them to your email list, let's say, or to your newsletter, this is a signal that these people may be very soon ripe potential customers. So, as I mentioned, I'm a fan of the rule of three. So, I'll share with you quickly here 3 ways to build your audience. And this happens through creating content, so content creation, content curation, which I'll talk about in a second, and then communication, directly interacting with people online. So, what are the differences between these three things? When I'm talking about creating content, I'm talking about building your own personal content. This can be as simple as posting content on LinkedIn, sharing some ideas with your audience, or sharing the latest trick that you've learned when developing a new WordPress theme. Or it can be something more related to your experience as a digital professional, because remember, emotional value and emotional discussions are also important here. So this can be something like sharing productivity tips or giving them an idea of like what you've seen working with a client and how this has given you a good idea about, promoting relationships between clients and developers. Then when it comes to curation, I'm simply talking here about collecting the information that you find online, that you find valuable and useful, and sharing that information with the world. You don't always need to rely on your own content, because sometimes sharing with people, hey, I saw this article, it's really good, and here are the 3 takeaways that I've gotten from this piece. This may be just as valuable to others. And this is also something that we would most often use when doing content on social media or in email, because this is where you can create bulk content in a quick way without spending a ton of time. And then when it comes to communication, well, it's just about talking with people. And again, the WordPress community is very conductive of all of that. So when we're thinking about creating content, there's one thing that I want you to think about, and this is creating content in a channel and in a format that works for you and that's interesting to you. And this can be anything from written content through audio, through video, maybe even creating small images or infographics if you love doodling by hand, and this is how you can get your message across. I would often see people trying to contort themselves into a channel that doesn't feel natural, or to create written content or video content that doesn't feel true to them. And this is the worst way you can start, because first off, this means that it will be very hard for you to actually create content. And then it also means that you won't be able to sustain this in the long run, because if it feels like a chore and if it's not something that you enjoy doing, you're more than likely to drop off the bandwagon and forget about it. So for me personally, written content is my jam. I love creating written content. I don't really like recording videos on my own unless it's a presentation format like this one, because it just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel comfortable or natural. So I'm creating blog posts, I'm writing my own newsletter, and this is where I'm sharing the insights that I have, and this is how I'm creating content to elevate my personal brand. If you're prone to communicating in a different channel, then do that. Here are two examples, one from the WordPress world and one not, that I really like, showing how different content, valuable content can be. So the first example, you don't need to read this whole thing because first of all, it's extra long and then it's in Bulgarian. But I'm giving you here a great example of a personal brand. And this is a guy who specializes in teaching people business English. So he's an English teacher. And he has this hashtag and a daily column, let's say, on LinkedIn that's called Sip of English. And he creates posts with roughly that same length that you see on the screen here. And he shares some interesting insights about different idioms or phrases that you can use in a business environment. He has more than 2,000 followers of his own branded hashtag by now, only by writing pieces in written form on LinkedIn. And as you can imagine, for a single English teacher, out of those 2,000 people, there are definitely going to be potential clients that can actually satisfy his own availability for English speaking courses. So he doesn't really need more than that. And writing is basically what suits him. Dinesh, I
Yeah,
think you want to go in
yeah.
here.
I just want to ask like one question to you. Like in your experience, what are the common mistakes that a digital professional make when it comes to personal branding in the WordPress space? Some of like one of them I know very well. Like in the WordPress communities, if you post a thread like an issue in the community, you will see many people they will give just one liner reply, and then when you reply to them they stop answering to you and like stop interacting to you. So it's a common mistake. Like if you want to become a brand in the community, then you need to like continue the conversation and make the connection. So in your thoughts, what are the like common mistakes that a digital professional make?
Thanks. And this is a great moment to ask this question, because I think like based on what you see here on the screen, you're probably gonna even guess my answer. But first off, when I'm talking about building value through content, this is exactly what I mean. Rather than posting a one-liner and a very cryptic response, dedicate that time to explain in detail how the person can achieve what he's trying to do. If you're coming from the position of the digital expert who knows how to fix a specific issue or a bug or something like that, even if you'll be able to answer fewer questions that way, but the ones you do, this is actually going to make a long lasting impression to both the person who asked the question and also everyone else who's seeing your answer online. So that's a great way of building that brand and showing people that you are actually knowledgeable. If you can give them, I don't know, like a screenshot or something to make it easier for them to solve it, then going that extra mile is really gonna show others that you really care. And then what you mentioned there, I'm going to leave that for a few minutes down the line in my talk, because I'll be answering that second bit about communication in a sec. But really, just to be quick and answer that question, it's about really, as you said, continuing that conversation and actually interacting with people. Um, we are tend to think, when we're thinking about, branding or marketing, we tend to think of it in a very transactional manner. I'm going to do this in order to get that, be it revenue, be it a request for a project or something like that. And we really need to shift that to a more human level, and we need to think about the connection that we're making. So it's not about, posting an answer to get a client. It's about, really interacting with that person on a human level and seeing what else they might need, so that you can do a better job at both replying to them, but also in building that trust that's going to get you the request for a new project that we all want.
Totally agree with you. And if you continue conversation with the people, and they start coming to your inbox and they trust you, so they start
Exactly.
asking questions directly to you in your inbox. So, like, it is a valid point that you have to gain the trust of the people.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks for
definitely.
thanks for the answer.
Definitely. Yeah. Sure. So, talking about trust, the other thing that really works well, and again, it's about finding that channel that fits you and that format that fits you. Maybe it's gonna be video or visual content. So, what you see here on my screen is my dear friend and someone you've already seen in the previous days of this 20th anniversary celebration by Cloudways, Mario Pesce from Devrix. He's really good at creating short form videos that present his own point of view as a founder and as a digital expert. And these are amazing at building trust, because even though I don't get to see Mario very often in real life, although we're based in the same city, sometimes that happens. I have a feeling that seeing his face and hearing his voice every week on LinkedIn sort of helps me stay connected to him in a way. And I can immediately jump if we're, let's say, a month ago at WordCamp Sofia, we were talking in one of the breaks, and I was like, hey, like I saw this piece of content that you created and you were talking about that topic, so let's jam on this a little bit. So it doesn't really need to go from online to offline. I'm just trying to say here that building that engagement actually comes from a channel and format that you feel comfortable in. Mario feels very comfortable in doing these videos. Personally, I wouldn't be able to. And one thing you can do, and in this slide deck, you also see links. If you haven't seen his profile on LinkedIn, do follow him. He has great advice. He's gonna he doesn't really take a ton of time to make these videos, pixel perfect, like amazingly lit and so on. It's a rough video, but it gives his point across in the most succinct and clear manner. So that's where the value lies. So again, don't be so skittish about posting somewhere that may seem to you a bit half baked. I'm sure that if the idea behind it is strong enough, people are going to interact and engage the same way that people interact and engage with his videos, which, as you see, are very simple and very, very, easy to create. So, when I'm talking about curation, which was the second point, I'm talking here about being the filter for your community. This can bring so much value you don't even realize. But think about it for yourself for a second. You probably follow some newsletters online. And this is where you're getting someone else being the filter on that topic for you. So in my case, although I am steeped in WordPress on a daily basis, I don't follow all the news about the community. But another good friend of mine, Remkus de Vries, he comes in to help with that. And he serves as my filter for everything related to WordPress. He has his own newsletter, WordPress and much more, as it's called, that you can follow to stay on top of what's brewing in the WordPress world. And a great thing of that is that if you see here a screenshot from the newsletter, he doesn't just give you the link that's a piece of news that he found interesting. He actually gives you a quick overview, his own take on that piece of information. And that's where the value lies as well. So be the one person that people are going to come to hear the latest news about your own niche, your own topic. And don't just, post a link and fly away. Give them a few ideas, your own takeaways about this, your own thoughts on the topic. And this is what actually helps them get to understand your own value as an expert, your expertise, and then they get to like you and trust you, as we were talking earlier. Here's another example of that, because it doesn't need to be just a newsletter. It can take many different forms, this idea of content curation. This is more in my professional field of marketing. This is a website called Marketing Examples, and Harry Dry, the guy who runs it, he creates different examples of great marketing. And if you click on any of the tiles that you see here, it's going to be a short description of the marketing campaign or activity and his own take on what makes that piece shine. So it can be an online library that you build on your own WordPress site. It can be a newsletter. It can be a weekly piece on LinkedIn that goes through everything that you've seen and you've liked this week. It doesn't need to be any specific format, as long as it's a format that you enjoy. And finally, and back to the Nesh point earlier, we need to talk to people. Communication is the most important element of these three, because you can't just broadcast your own stuff. And I really like this example here. We so often take social media as a place where we can just promote, that we forget that it's actually a place where we want to talk with people. And that's what it was all about in the beginning. And if you start thinking about, hey, like, why is no one interacting here? Take a step back and think, am I interacting with anyone? Do I take 10 minutes a day to go through my LinkedIn feed or my Twitter lists and actually reply back to people? Tell them that you liked what they shared, ask a question, give your own piece of advice, just communicate on a personal human level. And I know that everything I've talked about today can seem a bit overwhelming at first, especially if you haven't promoted your own brand up till now. But the good news is that you can start all of this off by just dedicating 4 hours a week to your personal brand and creating content around it. So here's what I mean by 4 hours. For creating your own content, you can take 2 hours a week to, record a podcast with a friend and talk about what you're working on, your own projects, and what you're learning from them. Or write up a newsletter piece, or even create a series of social media posts that you can post throughout the week. Then it comes to curating content. And I'm talking here about spending 1 hour a week and looking through the history of what you've read throughout the week. Most of us nowadays have a place where we collect interesting articles that we've seen or resources that we've stumbled across. Take 1 hour to go through everything that you've collected that week and combine it in a way where you can share it with others and you can tell them, hey, these are the interesting things I've stumbled across, and here's my own take on it. Remember the example with Remkus's newsletter. You want to give them your personal opinion to show that you're not just posting a link that you've seen somewhere online, but you're actually, thinking through these ideas and offering additional value. And then the third element, it doesn't really come with an option to batch it. You can't really communicate just 1 day a week and, call it a day. But spending 10 minutes a day with your afternoon coffee to go online, comment on social media, DM some people that you may have lost touch with, go on the Make WordPress Slack community and engage with people. Discuss with your own peers somewhere in an online community that you're actually following. All of that can be a viable way to build that human relationship and keep engaging with people on a personal level. And this is where most of the useful connections that will get you an actual project down the line happen. So this is what I wanted to go through. I'd love to answer some questions if we have the time, but just two quick things that I wanted to finish off on, because personal branding is what I do, so I'll do some branding on my end now. The first is on this link, or just by scanning the QR code, you can go to a page where you'll find the slides from this talk, some additional links and resources, and also my own personal newsletter. If you're interested in marketing news, then this can be a great way to see an example of content curation in real life, and you can learn some new marketing ideas. And the other thing that I wanted to mention here is, if you want to dive deeper into creating content, be it for your own personal brand or for a business that you're spearheading, then you might want to look at my video course. I just finished it off at the end of last year. I'm super proud of it, but it's my baby, And I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking what's in there. If you're interested in that, go to the site. And there's also a 50 euro of code that you can use, which is Love Cloudways, through the duration of the full next week. It will be available, and you can celebrate by learning more with when it comes to marketing and brand building. So that was me, the obligatory visual of a cat, which is very important to digital marketing, comes on this last slide. Thank you, everyone. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Vasilina, for the insightful presentation. We truly appreciate your expertise and the valuable information you have shared with us today. So let's jump onto the comment section. So we got one comment that is Andrew is asking, is it okay for a freelancer not to use his or her name while working alone? Is it okay to use a nickname or personal brand name?
So, frankly, if you're working on your own, that's pretty important. You can use a nickname. For example, as you can even see here, I rarely use my full first name once I've already started talking about it. I usually use Vasi, which is the shorthand, but it can even be something simpler. So the example I showed you with the English teacher, so his name is actually a very Bulgarian, long form name. So that's very popular with Slavic names, particularly. So Ilyan Stoyanov, that's rather long. And he calls himself Tank. But he does have his full name visible in specific places. So, for example, on his profiles online, there is a full name there. Frankly, if you don't feel comfortable about it, or if there's any reason that you wouldn't want to, I won't push it, but you need to know that it adds an additional layer of trust, because people connect that name with the idea that you're not just an anonymous someone online, you're a real person. So it can be beneficial to use your personal name, but if for whatever reason that doesn't feel comfortable to you, then start off by using a nickname and then grow from there.
So we have another question from Andrew, and he is thanking you for sharing your amazing presentation, and he is asking how important is to have a logo as a freelancer.
I don't think it's that important. You can just have your name in or your nickname, or whatever other version you choose as the header of your website and on your social media accounts. I've grown at the point to where I like to have a logo that also features my name, but it definitely isn't like a deal breaker or anything like that.
Thanks for the answer. And we have one more question from Charles, and he is asking personal branding versus business. 1%.
Well, if I think that it has to do a lot with your long-term plans. So when I started freelancing, one of the main reasons that I decided to go there was the fact that I've been in charge of marketing teams before, and it's not my favorite thing to do. I feel much more comfortable when I'm working on my own or collaborating with other professionals, but not being like, in charge of a 20-person team or something like that. So every when I started freelancing, I knew that I won't be willing to grow an agency out of what I'm doing. If you think that you are gonna start on your own and then start building that up as an agency, potentially sometime down the line, then maybe creating that brand name early on and starting to use it on a regular basis is gonna help. But to me, for small teams, and I'm counting here anything that's less than 10 people who are interacting, like who are client facing and are interacting with clients on a regular basis, this means that you still need to invest time in both your personal brand and the business brand, because um, mostly, at least in my experience, hiring a small team from the client's point of view also has to do a lot with the trust you put in the individual people in that team, rather than just like a brand name or an agency name. So this is why I was saying even from the start today that this everything that I'm sharing here, it's applicable to both a person who's working on their own as a freelancer or someone working in a small agency. Hope
Great.
that was helpful,
Awesome.
Charles.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vasilina. Before we conclude this session, I want to remind everyone to take advantage of the resources and recording for all the session which are available on website and also on our YouTube channel. Additionally, don't forget to connect with Vasilina on our social media channels and website for further insight and updates. And he also share like a super code, the Love Cloudways, so you can use that code as well. Vasilina, thanks once again for joining us and contributing to our celebration of 20 years of WordPress. Your expertise and passion have truly made this webinar week memorable. We are grateful for your time and knowledge.
Thank you so much for the invite. I love all events of Cloudways that I've participated in, and I can't wait to see you guys hopefully at WordCamp Europe in a few weeks' time.
Yeah. To all our participants, thank you for attending and engaging with us throughout this webinar week. We hope you find it informative and inspiring as we conclude this celebration, because it's a last day of this webinar week. We look forward to witnessing the continued growth and success of WordPress in the years to come. So thanks you once again, Vasilina, and thanks everyone who joined us. Have a nice day to everyone.